Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I have some more, if you like this, you'll love that, book recommendations. I think this is the third or fourth time I've done this video. I'll link the other ones down below. But I love doing these videos because I love finding a book that I really, really love and then reading every other book that reminds me of that book and trying to find something that measures up. And I also like when I get book recommendations where it's like one book was almost there for me and somebody has a recommendation for something similar with a different twist on it that maybe I would like more. So all of these recommendations are going to work that way. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the book recommendations. Also, if you like my shirt, it is fucking awesome. It is from this online shop called Rebel and Fleur. Objectify Men 2022. That is my prerogative, basically. Also, these earrings are from Etsy as well. Y'all always ask me, so I just wanted to say before we jump in. Okay, recommendation time. First up, we have some horror novellas. I would say if you like The Mist by Stephen King, you would also like We Need to Do Something by Max Booth. Both of these are kind of apocalyptic, but they don't start off that way. They both start with this big storm that ends up being more than everybody bargained for. In The Mist, a dad and his son get trapped in a grocery store, and this huge mist comes in following this big thunderstorm, and they realize that if they venture out into the mist, there are creatures waiting for them. In We Need to Do Something, a family shelters in their bathroom to stay safe from a tornado, and a tree falls and blocks the door to their bathroom, effectively locking them in there. They're waiting for somebody to come rescue them, and they find out that nobody's coming, and there are weird, inhuman things lurking outside the door to the bathroom. These are both pretty short. They're both like 100 and something pages. They both pack a huge punch. I did give this one 5 stars and this one 3 stars, so I like this one a little bit better. But if you're craving something like this, both of these will work. Next up, if you're a fan of Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, my favorite book of all time, which is basically my brand at this point, I would recommend you pick up Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. Both of these books are super, super dark, super graphic, and have every single trigger warning in the book, but they both follow a really strong female character who's working to expose the snuff porn industry, which is very, very specific, and neither of these women in these books kind of seek out this kind of thing where they're like trying to expose this. They kind of get caught up in the industry unintentionally. Of course, in Pretty Girls, we are following Claire, who she's estranged from one of her sisters, and another one of her sisters had gone missing years ago. And something happens that rocks her world, and she realizes that her sister's disappearance might be closer to solving than she thought. In Survivor, we follow a couple who is going on a weekend getaway, and the wife is kidnapped and told that she will be starring in a snuff film, but she will do anything that it takes to survive the ordeal. I have never rooted for a main character harder than I've rooted for these women, and both of these books have in-depth character development that far exceeds the vast majority of thrillers that I've ever read. This one is definitely more extreme horror. This one is a pretty digestible thriller. It's just more on the graphic side. I would say if you're okay with Pretty Girls, you might want to do a little bit more research before you just jump right into Survivor, because it's hard to get my stomach to turn, and this one definitely did it. At one point, I literally closed the book and asked myself, am I really reading this book right now? Like, I felt disgusting reading this book, but I was rooting for Lisa, our main character, so hard that I had to finish it. And this book, there's not quite as much torture porn, but it's definitely present. I just think it's for a more emotional purpose, whereas for this book, it feels a little gratuitous at times. So definitely use your judgment before you dive into these. You've been warned. Next up, we have some YA thrillers. If you enjoyed A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, I would definitely recommend 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. Both of these books follow a girl in her late teens who is working on an investigative project. In A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, our main character runs a podcast, and in 14 Ways to Die, our main character is on a YouTube reality show. In A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, we're following Pip, who for her senior project is using this true crime case that took place in her town because she believes that the guy that was arrested was falsely accused, and she wants to find the real killer. So she sets out to do that by starting a true crime podcast, which we get pieces of in the book. 14 Ways to Die follows I think she's a high school senior as well, and her mom was tragically killed by an infamous serial killer who has never been caught. So she goes on this reality show with the intention of kind of putting herself as bait for this serial killer, so he comes after her and she can finally catch the man who murdered her mother. I feel like both of these main characters are very, very similar, and both of these books have super, super short chapters that just fly by. Both of these are very fast-paced. Next up, I think if you like The Third Wife by Lisa Jewell, you would also like The Three Mrs. Wrights by, I can't remember the author right now, but it will obviously be on the screen. Both of these books follow men who are juggling relationships with 3 women. If you like that kind of polygamy, weird, toxic relationship kind of trope in a thriller, you will love both of these. The Three Mrs. Wrights follows this one man who has 3 different relationships, a wife, a fiance, and a girlfriend, but none of them know about each other. And it's about how this man is exposed and how it goes a lot deeper than any of the women think. The Third Wife follows this man who has been married 3 times. He's on his 3rd marriage, but somehow he's been able to keep pretty civil relationships with his 2 previous wives, and they all kind of hang out, they go on vacations together. It is very, very weird. But the third wife starts getting these anonymous threatening messages, and you're trying to figure out who it is, who is after her. Is it the husband? Is it one of the other wives? Is it one of the children? And it is so drama filled. Both of these books really bring the drama the whole time. They are so like scandalous, almost soap opera-ish. So if you like that, you will definitely like either of these thrillers. Next up, let's get into some serial killer romance. If you like the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey, I think you would love the Girl in 6E series by A.R. Torre. Both of these books follow female serial killers who get roped into romantic relationships, and the series is following them trying to carry out the murders that they want to do while also juggling a very complicated romantic relationship. In the Mindfuck series, we follow Lana, who is a revenge killer. She is running down the list of everyone who traumatized her from her past and picking them off one by one. She ends up running into the FBI agent that is in charge of her case and falling for him while he is on her tail. This is a heck of a ride. It definitely requires some suspension of disbelief, but if you're into serial killer romance, you will love this series. The Girl in 6E follows a cam girl who has locked herself in her apartment to try to control her homicidal urges. However, when she is camming one day and finds out about a possibly violent situation, she entrusts the local UPS guy that she has been falling into a chaotic romance with to help her avenge this violent situation. This one, just like the Mindfuck series, is super heart pumping. Definitely requires a little bit of suspense of disbelief, but it is so exciting and totally hooks you into the series. If you're looking for a lighter romance and you like Beach Read by Emily Henry, I would definitely suggest picking up The Roughest Draft. Both of these books follow authors who are kind of stuck writing together and the budding romance that is coming up between them. Both of these books also dive into a little bit of the backstory and trauma of both of the main characters. It's not quite a light, fluffy romance. It gets into the nitty-gritty of what makes these people people. And I think both of these books are beautifully written. In Beach Read, we are following Augustus and January, who attended the same writing program and actually really did not like each other in school, but they end up writing their next book in neighboring beach houses. And when they find out that the other is also suffering from writer's block, they decide to switch genres and challenge themselves. So January takes on literary fiction and Gus takes on romance. And in order for Gus to truly understand the magic of romance, January starts taking him on these fake dates. The Roughest Draft is also an enemies to lovers, kind of. It's more like friends to enemies to lovers, because this writing duo published a book together that took off, is like, think like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, like book that is sweeping the nation kind of thing. And then right after the release of the book, they had a huge falling out, but they still have a contract with their publisher and they have to come out with their next book. So it's kind of a forced proximity thing because they are forced to live in this beach house together and churn out another romance while they have all of this unresolved stuff towards each other. I absolutely loved this book. I liked it even more than Beach Read, but I know this is getting a lot of negative reviews. I would say if you are feeling like you want to read this book, the number one question you need to ask yourself is, are you okay with some cheating? Some emotional cheating, very light physical cheating, things like that. And if you feel like you can handle that, definitely read this one. If you're like, no, absolutely not, maybe don't pick this one up. Next up, I have a trio of recommendations. If you like Someone We Know by Sherry Lapina, I think you would also like For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt, and The Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreight. All three of these books are domestic / legal thrillers. There's some very light legal elements to all of these, but they're all about basically how far you will go for your family, your partner, the people you care about. In Someone We Know, it follows this neighborhood where some devious acts are taking place, and one of our main characters knows that it's her son that's carrying it out, but things start escalating and she has to protect him. For Better and Worse is very similar. It's following a couple who are both lawyers, and they find out about this horrifying, tragic situation with their son. So they have to basically go to the ends of the earth to right the situation without going through the legal system, because they know the ins and outs and how bad it would be for their son if they did. And finally, in A Good Marriage, this follows a woman who is really struggling in her marriage, and she finds out that an old friend from law school is actually trying to get her to be his defense attorney for killing his wife. And as you read along, you realize the parallels between our main character's marriage and this guy's marriage, who obviously ended really badly because he allegedly murdered his wife, and she will go to the ends of the earth to defend him. Let's jump back into romance. If you liked 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James, but you just wanted a little bit more, or you were annoyed by the main character, I would implore you to try the Sinners and Saints duet by Sophie Lark. Obviously, 50 Shades of Grey is about a super rich guy who is enamored with this poor, very ordinary college girl. takes her under his wing and engages in a sadomasochistic relationship with her. The Sinners duet follows an extremely wealthy artist
who is also a serial killer on the side.
And he takes a young, scrappy, poor artist under his wing, and they have a relationship together that is also very BDSM heavy. Both of these books have the very wealthy, dominant man and the poor, ordinary, submissive girl who kind of gets taken into his crazy world. I really, really loved both of these books a lot more than I liked the 50 Shades series. I feel like I wanted to like 50 Shades, but this is just giving so much more. The mystery thriller plot adds so much. So if you liked this, you will definitely love that. If you're a fan of domestic thrillers and you loved The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine, I think you'll also love Every Last Secret by A.R. Torre. These are both Bitch, I'm Gonna Snatch Your Life thrillers following a super rich woman and a scrappy, younger, poorer woman who's trying to steal the other's life. And that pretty much captures the essence of both of these books. I want to keep it vague so you can get really into the drama of both of them, but they're both really, really similar. This one is more beachy, summery, poolside read. This could also be a poolside read, but there are some scenes that take place like in the winter in New York City, so it's more like of a city vibe, if you know what I mean. But if you like rich people drama, you will love both of these. Next up, if you enjoyed 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton, which is about a school shooting and goes really in depth over the 3 hours when it took place in the school, but maybe you wanted it to be a little bit more fast-paced and not as heavy, because this one is a very real account of what a school shooting is like, I think you might want to try Violent Ends. This is a YA book, I'm pretty positive, and it follows a school shooting from the student's perspective. It is terrifying and heart-pumping, but it is not as emotional and slow-paced as 3 hours. You're kind of trying to find out who the school shooter is and what his motives are in Violent Ends, whereas in 3 hours, it's really an emotional account of what it's like to go through that. And if you enjoyed 3 hours but wanted a nonfiction book about what a school shooting is like and the implications that it can have on everyone involved, I would recommend Columbine. I read this book probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I still find myself thinking about it. It is a nonfiction true crime account of the events that happened at Columbine, and there's perspectives from so many different people involved, including the families of the school shooters. It touches on the basement tapes, the religious motivations, everything that was speculated in the media, and clarifies what really happened and the real implications that took place afterwards. Jumping back into some lighter recommendations, if you enjoyed my favorite romance from 2021, It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, I would also recommend you pick up The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. Both of these books are enemies to lovers romances following a prissy, high-maintenance Barbie-type girl and a rugged, salt-of-the-earth, working-class man who butt heads at the beginning, but eventually find out they have more in common than they thought. Both of these books also have elements of the guy helping the girl through grieving her father, which is very, very specific. It Happened One Summer, obviously, is way more summery, takes place off the coast of Washington in this cutie little fishing town, whereas Simple Wild, it takes place in the very wintry setting of Alaska. So I think if you read this one in the winter and you really liked it, pick up this one in the summer or vice versa. Next, we have another trio of recommendations. If you liked Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty, I would recommend Happy and You Know It by Lauren Hankin or The Baby Shower by S.E. Lines. All three of these books follow mommy drama. If you like the rich moms lining up outside the preschool vibes with a side of murder, all three of these are great for you. The Baby Shower is also a bitch I'm gonna steal your life story that goes a little bit deeper than the other two recommendations. There's some great real life commentary on what it's like to be a modern woman and navigating infertility and female friendships, but there's also a ton of drama and so much emotion was pulled out of me while reading this book. Big Little Lies obviously follows this group of moms as they navigate the aftermath of somebody being murdered at their charity gala and them all being suspects. Happy and You Know It is a little bit sillier, funnier, lighthearted. It follows this girl who is kind of down on her luck. She's trying to make it in New York City, but she ends up having to take a job singing for children at these rich playgroups with all these moms and their children. She ends up getting kind of pulled into their rich, bougie world and kind of being this outside observer to all of the darker things that they are into, and murder happens. So if you like mommy drama, all three of those would be great picks. And finally, my last duo of recommendations is if you like slashers, if you like horror movies, these are for you. If you liked Brother by Anya Alborn, one of my favorite horror books of all time, I would definitely recommend you pick up Kin by Keelan Patrick Burke. Both of these stories are very character driven and they follow a family of inbred cannibalistic murderers. Very specific, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes vibes. Brother is definitely more graphic and gory. You're following in the moment as this family is stalking and killing and eating their victims. But it really takes a look outside of the gore at the toxic family dynamics and generational trauma that's happening within this family, especially with regards to the youngest brother, who is unsure if he is down with the questionable morals of his family as he's growing up. Kin is definitely more of a bigger scope. It is following the family in the aftermath of one of their killings when a final girl escapes and gets away. So you're not only following the perspective of the family, specifically one of the brothers who is also, again, like Brother, questioning the morals of the family, but you're also following the final girl and one of the people who helped the final girl escape. So it really follows how a tragedy and how a family that has gotten so toxic like this can have such far-reaching consequences for many people in this community. It is still very graphic and gory, but not as much so as Brother. I think this one is more psychologically scary. I definitely liked Brother more than Kin, but if you're looking for this type of book, both of them will work. I think some people will like Brother and some people like Kin better, but if you liked one, you're definitely not gonna hate the other. All right, guys, those are all my if you like this, you'll love that book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.